A continuation of a joint public hearing of the Salem City Council and the Planning Board was held in Council Chamber on Monday, April 30th, 2018 at 6 p.m. for the purpose of continuing discussion on the following three separate zoning ordinance amendments. Number one, an ordinance amending zoning section 3.0, table of principal and accessory use regulations, amending Scrivener's errors from 2009 recodification, including allowing a dwelling above first floor retail, service or office in B1 zone, allowing by right clubs, indoor commercial recreation, service, plumbing, carpentry, sheet metal, restaurants, manufacturing, storage, research, development, and adult daycare in I zone, allowing by special permit outdoor commercial recreation and accessory structures in I zone, I being industrial. And two, an ordinance amending zoning section 4.1.1, table of dimensional requirements establishing, number one, max height of fences, and two, dimensional requirements for B1 zone dwellings. Three, an ordinance amending zoning section 10.0, definitions relative to dwelling unit, rooming, boarding, and lodging house, general service establishment, assisted living residence, site plan review, and zoning board of appeal. Notice of this meeting was posted on April 11th, 2018 at 11:26 a.m. Absent from the council is no one. Councilor Beth Gerard, am presiding. And if the planning board would like to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Ben
Anderson.
Ellen Sides. Carol Hamilton.
Bill Brissett.
Matt Vino.
Thank you. And if I can just acknowledge that we did receive a letter from Historic Salem regarding the zoning in B1. I don't know if everybody wants to hear me read. I don't think people need to hear me talk more than I do. But I just want that to be acknowledged, and there are copies available if anybody needs a copy of the letter. Continuation of joint public hearing of the City Council and Planning Board.
Zoning Amendment Section 3.0, Table of Principal and Accessory Use Regulations, amending Scrivener's errors from 2009 recodification, including allowing a dwelling above first floor retail, surface or office in B1 zone, service, oh my God, allowing by rights indoor commercial recreation, plumbing, carpentry, sheet metal, restaurants, manufacturing, storage, research, development, adult daycare, and industrial zone, allowing by special permit outdoor commercial recreation, accessory structures, in industrial zone.
And I also want to acknowledge that from the city, we have Tom Daniels, the Director of Planning and Community Development, and we also have Tom St. Pierre, the Director of Inspectional Services. We also have Beth Renard, the City Solicitor. And I think that's it from the city. So Tom, if you wanted to start again and go over the issue at I know there was an updated letter or set of letters that were provided to councilors. Did you, I'm assuming you gave it also to the planning board as well?
Yes, yep, thank
Okay.
you, Madam President. So we distributed a letter and some attachments, and there's some extra copies floating around. I asked members of the public if you have one and can share it with someone who doesn't, just so they can take a look. So what I thought we could do is just walk through this. What you'll see is a cover letter, and then there's three ordinances, Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, that are referenced in here and is the subject of the joint public hearing continuing. So we thought it would be helpful just to restate what we're doing here and what the recodification effort was. So to recap, the prior ordinance was a 1965 version of the zoning ordinance. It was found to be quite cumbersome for folks to use, not just people in the city staff, but also applicants. It was complex in terms of the uses. There's kind of a nesting. Each district referred to another district in terms of the uses that were permitted. Uses that were allowed by special permit were in a different section. There were other challenges to it. So the effort in 2008, 2009 was to produce a document that was the same in policy and substance, but was easier for people to utilize. And one of the big improvements in the current zoning ordinance is a table of uses. So it's much easier for people to find out what is allowed, what's allowed by right, what special permit, what uses are allowed by special permit, etc. And so in that process, as I said, the intention wasn't to change policy, it was meant to make a document that was easier for people to utilize. And there were a couple errors that happened in that. One of them we talked about at the last joint public hearing regarding swimming pools, and that was referred on to the planning board. One of the other matters that continues to be open is the table of principal and accessory uses. And so the first one in that, which is, so I'm on page 2 of my memo, which references Roman numeral 1 and the attachment. So Roman numeral 1 in the attachment speaks to the ordinance, and section 1 of that is looking at, 1A is looking at the B1 district and whether dwelling units above first floor retail, personal service, or office use is allowed or not. And so just to recap, again, in 1965 version, the ordinance stated the following are permitted uses in neighborhood business districts, which is the B1 zone. All uses permitted in R3 districts subject to the provisions specified for each use. So clearly residential was a permitted use under the old ordinance in B1, and it's still a permitted use today. The question that this matter addresses is whether or not that use can be, you can have a residential use above a commercial use. And there was nothing in the 1965 ordinance that explicitly stated you can do that, but it was also in there that you could have these multiple uses. And I did want to direct your attention just to the language, subject to all the provisions specified for each use. So with that, it's saying that if you had a property that had a ground floor use of commercial and an upper floor use of residential, the provisions of each use needed to be met. And the zoning, Tom and I have spoken about this quite a bit, and given that language, as well as he has consistently had interpreted it, that you could have that mixture of uses. And it also reflects the character of the B1 zoning districts like Derby Street, where you have that. So that's what we were trying to clarify tonight, the background on it, and why the matter went forward, changing it from a no to a yes, that it was viewed as an error when the 2009 recodification happened. The second part of this is looking at the industrial uses, and so similarly, there were some errors when the recodification happened. And unfortunately, and we referenced this when we were before you earlier in the month, the transmittal that we sent over to you had its own set of errors. So what we are drawing your attention to is in this ordinance, which has, or this version of it, which has the strike through. Again, this is Roman numeral 1. Under section 1D, you can see that we were striking under B letters 1, club or lodge private, number 2, commercial recreation indoor, number 5, personal service establishment, and number 7, restaurant with service of alcoholic beverages. Those things are correct, and so we erred in what we submitted to you. Those we're not looking, we don't see any changes being needed there. What we are seeing is that what was originally number 3, number 4, and number 6, commercial recreation outdoor, general service establishment, plumbing, carpentry, and sheet metal shop, that those had previously been allowed as a special permit for commercial recreation outdoor, or as a permitted as of right for general service establishment and plumbing, carpentry, and sheet metal shop. So again, going back to 1965, those 3 uses were permitted first, either as a special permit from the Board of Appeals or as of right. And so what's before you is to bring it back to what the former zoning ordinance had. Also in the industrial section, letter C on this ordinance is regarding the industrial uses in the industrial district. So there you see we're striking numbers 1, number 2, and number 4 for light manufacturing, manufacturing, and research laboratories. Again, we erred in what we had submitted to you. Those are fine. What we are moving forward with still tonight is number 3, where a mini storage warehouse facility should not be a special permit. It should be a permitted use in the industrial district. And on the back side of this page, letter D is looking at accessory uses in the industrial zoning district. We're striking the first one again from our error regarding adult dairy care. However, regarding private garages and other accessory structures, that was a special permit under the 1965 ordinance, and so rather than being not allowed, we are saying that the correction would be to have it be a special permit from the Board of Appeals. And with that, Tom, did you want to add anything at this point?
On a roll, keep going.
All right. So we can pause there and take questions.
Okay, from the council first, Councilor Terrell and then Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, to the Toms. I don't, I talked about this a little bit. Now I will focus mainly on the B1. That's the area of the most interest because I look out my bedroom window every day at a B1 with, dwelling over retail. So in this case, a convenience store and a restaurant. So it's very clear between that and others that that's the basic character of a B1. We do have, within the B1 districts, we do some cases where we have single-story retail or commercial of some sort. There is some of that on Lafayette Street. There's some of that on North Street. There's some of that in other areas. So my question, I see you have the dimensional tables worked out in here. So you have it specified the 3,500 square foot dimensional for lot area. My question would be about what is permissible height in one of these. So my most significant concern, and this I'll echo some of what we've gotten from feedback from the outside too, is that without not knowing the height limit, I wouldn't want to see, something like a 45-foot maximum height within the B1 for new construction over retail. That would be a concern as far as character in a lot of these neighborhoods. But having, something reasonable like around the 30-foot is probably more in what's appropriate. So I'd like to get some clarity on that from you.
Well, either one of us can address it, but currently in the new zoning ordinance, the 2009, the height in B1 is 30 feet, and we don't propose any change to that.
Okay. That's the major. On the industrial side, I didn't have too many questions about the original batch of proposals, and with this focus narrowed considerably, I have even fewer concerns there. Just a couple of things that I did have questions on have been stricken, so. Thank you.
Good. Councilor McCarthy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Tom. When we talk about, we've had many discussions in this room over the last couple weeks about Scribner's errors and what they are and what they entail, but ultimately, however it transpired, whenever we codified zoning, and as the book appears now, that's the book that you enforce, is that correct?
It is. And could I add one thing?
You can add as much as you want.
I think the city solicitor is prepared to speak to that just a little bit about the verbiage and Scribner's errors, if you'd like, if it's a good time to address that.
Yeah.
If I could finish.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
No, that's fine. No, I agree with that.
Absolutely.
But what I'm trying to get at is, because we've heard a lot over the last couple of weeks, is a Scribner's error, however it transpired, was some sort of error. And the zoning that appears in the book is the zoning that you enforce. But this is you identifying some areas that with the planning, I'm assuming with the planning department, identifying some areas that, in your opinion, were missed or somehow changed or inadvertently, however it was, and it's in front of us to consider changing it back to the way it was, or we can decide to keep it the way it is. It's just because there was never any sort of public hearing, which we're having right now, relative to the changes, because they were inadvertently made. So now we're looking at these changes, and you can either agree with them or don't agree with them.
Yeah, that's correct. That's a pretty good summation. And I think what the city solicitor is going to tell you is going to clear that up even a little better for you.
Even better.
Okay, so Beth, do you want to?
Yeah,
address?
so Council Dibble and I spoke about this last week, and we pulled the actual 2009 vote. The city clerk helped us with this Friday afternoon. And what we discovered is that in the vote that the council took in 2009, there was a section of repeal of the entire ordinance that predates the recodification. So there was an entire repeal, and then I can read it to you. It says, the repeal provided herein shall not be construed to revive any ordinance or part thereof. And then it talks about future additions being part of the zoning ordinance. So there was in fact a repeal of the old ordinance, and the new ordinance was adopted. And any amendments there too, and any amendments that we make tonight will be part of the zoning ordinance going forward.
Thank you.
So I thought that was timely to put that in there, to explain that. So the word scrivener's errors at this point really, I guess errors is just the term you can use. We really don't even need to use scriveners. The old ordinance is gone, but there were mistakes made when they carried it over.
Thank you.
We're trying to correct some.
Any other counselors? No? Counselor Sargent?
Just on the B1, I think that's the biggest sticking point for some of us is it still says comply with all dimensional requirements of R3. And if you comply with dimensional requirements of R3, you allow 45 feet height versus 30 feet height.
Sure.
Madam Chair, if I could address Councilor Sargent. Actually, when we get to the next piece, that came up at the last public hearing, that the language that was addressing height wasn't our intention, so should I
Well,
just wait and address
it wasn't
that?
so much height, it's the word dimension versus the word density. If you allow R3 density, you allow R3 density if you build in a B1 zone. If you allow R3 dimensions, you allow setbacks, height, width, all of the dimensions. So if you allow R3 dimensions, you allow R3 height in a B1 zone. If you allow density, you allow 3,500 square feet per dwelling unit.
So our revision that we'll get to at the next point is saying that the minimum lot area per dwelling unit would be 3,500 feet, which is consistent with the R3.
Right.
That's the change.
But we still have to strike the word dimension out of there.
It's,
If we do anything, we have to take the word dimension out of,
again, when we get to the revision, that language is no longer.
It's struck.
Is stricken.
and the other thing in the correction of the old zoning, there's nothing that I read into B1 ever being allowed by right, to have housing allowed by right above B1 in the old zoning. I mean, it says, as you said, it says, you can use, let me see, I gotta make sure I got that one. All uses permitted in the R3 district. And the R3 district is R3 residential. So the fact that a lot of the old part of the city is grandfathered and has residential uses above businesses doesn't mean that we're grandfathering everything going forward. I mean, if it was meant to have, in the B1, to have housing above the commercial use, it probably would have been written the same way as number 16 under B5, where it says, one family, two family, and multifamily residential uses as primary uses, townhouse, row houses, flats, multi-story, including high rises, and as secondary uses and upper floors. That was language that we used in the old zoning. If that was allowed in B4 or, B2 or B1, it would have been written the same way. So I can understand that you can have R3 housing in a B1 district, but to go forward, assuming that because things with grandfather we're doing the whole city, is to open up every strip mall, large and small, in B1 zones to housing above it, a second story possibly, and if we were to get a variance from dimensions, a possible 3-story. And that's a lot of units that could be going forward in different parts of the city, assuming parking and all those things come into play. But the other thing is that if you argue that it was allowed in B1 under the old zoning and we made an error not putting it in, then you have to take the argument that it's allowed in B2, because the old zoning said for B2 uses everything allowed in B1. So then you have to take the argument that it's allowed in B4, because the old zoning said B4, everything that's allowed in B2, B1, R3, it cascaded. So you can't make the argument that it's allowed above B1 retail and then say, no, it didn't, the old zoning didn't say it was allowed. You gotta take all three, or you gotta eliminate all three. And that's the thing going forward, is so many parts of the city would be opened up to housing above commercial or retail office use. And I don't think that was the intent of the strip malls around the city. It's not like downtown. It's not like Lafayette, Boston, Bridge, Derby Street. We understand those come from a day when many people lived above the business they worked in and operated, so. I yield, thank you.
Thank you.
You want me to address that?
Yeah.
So we talked about this for a little bit. First of all, you got to understand that our zoning is based on a table of uses. Not every zoning document is written this way, but we write allowed uses, and then we write special permit uses. In the old code, in my interpretation, which matters, it clearly states that these uses are allowed, including the residential use. Nowhere in there does it say it has to be one or the other, or that you can't have a mix of it. It just says these are allowed uses, all the following. And as far as going forward, I understand your argument about the B2 and the cascading zoning that we used to have. That's what the whole codification project was, to get rid of that and try to get rid of those things, because they were very problematic. But what we think addresses the problem that you're concerned about is that we still included the language that they have to meet the requirements for each use. So a new residential use in the B1 would, first of all, the business would have to satisfy the parking requirements. The shopping center or whatever would have to maintain the same number of parking spaces that were required to be there in the first place. Then if they propose to add, they'd have to go by the number of units times 3,500 square feet, which would limit the number of units they could do anyhow. And then they'd still have to comply with the parking requirements that exist today. 1.5 or 2 spaces, depending upon where it is. So we felt that that's not a real big risk, that there's going to be an awful lot of that going on. I mean, you got to try to do something with it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of council? Seeing none, members of the planning board, any questions? Comment? Okay, so members of the public, anybody here to speak either in favor or opposed? Polly, do you want to come up to the podium, and you know the drill?
Holly Wilbert, 7 Cedar Street. The notice at the time of the recodification clearly stated that there would be a 90-day time frame to cure any defects in the recodification. And I believe that that worked both ways, both from the city side and the notice to the public. 9 years have passed since the process was completed. During that time, many entities have bought property based on the zoning as detailed in the dimensional tables and have redeveloped that property. Any change of zoning or conditions of the zoning made today under notice of a scrivener's error would impact the investments made during those 9 years, with possible negative impacts. Further, to provide notice based on past errors diminishes the need for property owners to come out now to discuss any potential changes that would be made under something that should have been publicly noticed as changes and not as errors. The 2009 recodification process clearly and repeatedly stated that no changes were being made to the zoning. There's no evidence provided that the changes now being contemplated were in fact errors, and in fact, these are clearly changes to the zoning that existed at the time of the recodification. And in fact, further changes are being proposed tonight of which the public has had no notice. And I don't believe that it's an ongoing discussion. As Director Daniel noted, they've gone back and they've found further errors and brought them forward tonight. I believe that this needs to be publicly advertised with a new hearing, with a new discussion process, based on the fact that this process is essentially flawed from how the public was told about the meetings and why they were being held. For those who've purchased property near a B1 zone, they expected that it would not have residential above it. And in fact, people have bought property based on the N in the dimensional tables and redeveloped that B1 property and have not been provided the opportunity to provide residential above it based on the dimensional table, and could conceivably come to the city and state that they have been damaged by the inability to maximize their investment based on this process tonight. By proceeding with this process as presently considered, the city opens itself to significant legal entanglements from a variety of parties who feel that they were or could be adversely impacted by changes offered under the guise of errors. And as just read by the council president, further significant changes not noticed to the public being made tonight are significantly changing this process. I believe the process is defective and it needs to be started over.
Thank you. Beth, could we get a clarification on that?
So there were 5 ordinances that were advertised in one ad. The one ordinance change to the table in section 3 was the one that referenced Scrivener's errors. The others did not mention those at all. With respect to the Scrivener's errors, this is a zoning amendment change. This is a change to the zoning ordinance. We have the joint public hearing that we're having here. I don't believe there are any changes that are being proposed, only deletions, which are appropriate. I don't believe there are any significant changes that are being proposed here on any of the ordinances that would require a notice. With respect to the other issues, each and every one of them, I think we can look at individually and see if there are significant changes to them. I don't think there are.
Thank you.
And if the council feels that we need to strike the words Scrivener's errors from the preamble section of the ordinance amendment, we certainly could do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public? Flora? And then Justin.
At 30 Northeast Street. I'm just going to speak about the B1 zoning because of the Bridge Street, which is like similar to Lafayette and Derby, and has the retail on the bottom, and it needs to have the dwelling, the multi-family dwelling on the above. And that has not been so, and and that needs to be fixed. And I think it's reasonable after what I heard Tom St. Pierre said about, so the B1 would stay a lot size maximum of 35,000 square feet, and the maximum height of the building would be 30 feet. So that's less than the R2 height. So that's very reasonable. To what Polly was saying, that people built things based on these zoning, there's also buildings existing, that had the original zoning, so you can look at both sides of that coin. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin?
Justin Whittier, 10 River Street. I'm glad to hear that we've had it clarified that the old zoning was repealed so that the question of Scrivener's errors are irrelevant. That would have been a helpful clarification to have from the start. That would have made things a lot more simple. So given that that's the case, I hope that the changes that are now under consideration, you'll take them up, with regard to the merit, since now, you have to consider them as such. And in doing so, I hope that you will consider that, all these industrial areas abut neighborhoods, and so that you want to allow some protection for the neighborhoods, to new uses that are coming in there. So rather than allow things by right, I hope that you'll consider maintaining a Board of Appeals protection so that there will be, an additional layer rather than simply saying it's by right to have these uses added. And then just one question for me, because I'm paranoid. I just have a question about the retaining walls. And in a number of the business zones, they're allowed to be built to 10 feet. And I just wondered, does that mean that you could potentially have a lot at a certain elevation, build a retaining wall around it, and raise the level of the ground 10 feet? I want to be clear on what that means for any given lot. Thank you very much.
Okay. Tom, can you answer that? Or Tom? I'm so glad you knew exactly which Tom I was referring to when I said the first one.
Retaining walls, it's mentioned both in the old ordinance and the new ordinance, are measured from the inside of the owner's side of the wall. If you build it and it's 10 feet tall, that doesn't then let you fill in the spot behind it. And it's just how the wall's measured from the existing grade. And any change in elevation more than 2 feet has to be subjected to the engineer's office for a drainage alteration plan anyhow.
Okay. Counselor Terry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I have one question. Again, this is a B1 related question. Knowing that, in the B1 zone today, we have an enormous amount of business below housing. On Bridge Street, on Lafayette Street, on Derby Street, et cetera, and really all throughout the city, including North Street and all over. The question I have right now, since by the table that is currently an N, what's the process right now when a business, if a business on the first floor wants to depart and hand over the keys to somebody else who's going to do either run that business or do something else, replace a shop with a restaurant or vice versa, what's the process now since that's not an allowed use? This is mostly for clarification, just to the room, but.
If I might, if it's a similar use, it's going to be a grandfathered continuation, no parking requirements or anything else. If it's a new use, then they need to comply with today's zone, parking requirements, et cetera. And if they're going to change it substantially to another, if it's a non-conforming use now and it's going to another non-conforming use, that's a special permit, usually through the zoning board.
Thanks.
Counselor Sargent?
Thank you. If it's in a B1 zone, there's already a business there, so it's an allowed use. So if you're changing from one B1 business to another one, there should be no issue, right?
Right, they stated that.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's the housing above it, if there's housing, would be grandfathered.
If I can say what the trend is, or my own personal observation of what happens in the B1 zone currently, is that small stores, small retails are struggling. And oftentimes the property owner finds it more valuable to replace it with a housing unit. That's been what most of the inquiries have been about. It's very small, very hard to run a small business nowadays in these retail stores.
And just for a comment, there's so many changes are made to the city as not substantially less detrimental with all the grandfathered uses, and it's a difficult process, but it seems to work, and things like that are on every Board of Appeals agenda, and they usually find a way to work it out. So anything that's grandfathered, I don't think anybody's intent is to have something be unused. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, and then Tim. So Barbara, yes, I think.
So I am similarly, Barbara Clary, 104
Thank
Federal
you.
Street. I'm similarly pleased that we're not talking about Scrivener's errors. The whole discussion made me very uncomfortable. We're trying to discern what was in somebody's mind before the recodification. I think it's very difficult to prove. And I think the fact that it was completely revoked answers that question. So given that what we're doing is looking at some changes, and it's interesting information, what existed before. It's just information. So I would really suggest that, particularly in the industrial uses, that where that the Y should be BA, Board of Appeals. I don't see any reason you would not want to give the Board of Appeals the ability to condition a use. It's allowed, but then they have to go, and it could be hours, it could be the kinds of manufacturing, or whatever's happening. So I don't see any reason that any of these should be Y. And I would recommend that you delete the Scrivener's error in the ordinance when you adopt it. And I am similarly
I'm not a lawyer. I just don't know if this was advertised correctly.
Tim? And then Mike.
Thanks very much. Tim Jenkins, 18 Broad Street. I appreciate Counselor Sargent's question and Counselor Turiel's regarding dimensional versus density. In trying to read this, I still do not understand whether the wording shouldn't be density as opposed to dimensional requirements. I may have misunderstood what was being said, but to clarify that, it would, I believe it's correct if you use the word density versus dimensional, you wouldn't run into the 30 feet versus 45 feet in the B1 district based on the R3, zoning dimensional requirements or allowances. And then the second issue that I have is back to this, the issue of how this was advertised. I do believe that Ms. Wilbert points out a good point that this was passed 9 years ago. There was a 90-day review period. So I think my view would be that for the city to protect itself against claims that people bought properties and were not permitted or allowed to do X, Y, or Z, and retroactively were correcting some of these mistakes, that it would probably, it might take a little longer, but I believe you can protect yourself by re-advertising and doing exactly what's being proposed, if you will. The only other question I have goes back to the business of special permits or variances, whatever, that are, that I believe should be obtained if you're going to do certain uses next to other uses in an industrial area, for instance, adult daycare. Putting adult daycare, if I'm not mistaken, would be allowed there?
Been removed?
No? Wrong. Oh, it has, I'm sorry, okay. In any case, yeah, that was one that I would go, whoa, that you could run into big problems there. I apologize for misunderstanding that. And again, the ability to review certain uses. Industrial areas tend to be dangerous. And that's why we put them in certain locations. So again, I don't want to go point by point, but I think having that ability to give the board the opportunity to review a situation, determine whether or not a permit should be permitted, gives the building inspector a little bit more cover too. So thanks.
Thank you. And then Mike?
Mike Becker, 2 School Street Court. I'd like to go over the benefits of the current B1 zoning, but I'd also like to note that based on my research, there's only been about 7 units added throughout the entire city over the last 9 years. But Tom, can you? Basically, the B1 lots are all pretty small lots with a few exceptions, very few exceptions. So adding a 3,500 square foot restriction pretty much precludes most of the B1 lots from having any housing being added over them. It's kind of counterproductive. Also, I'd just like to kind of point out Bridge Street as sort of a case study on this. This is Bridge Street before. If anybody forgot what it used to look like, this is Bridge Street 2 years later. So where that's an entrance corridor and people who don't know Salem are driving in and looking at that, that's what they're looking at and saying, this is what Salem looks like. And North Street certainly hasn't had the redevelopment that Bridge Street has had. So, I mean, people have poured a ton of money into Bridge Street, and that's not possible. You can't buy a 2-family for $500,000, put $300,000 into it, and sell the condos for $375 a piece. That just doesn't work. But getting another unit kind of makes the whole thing work out. Putting this restriction of 3,500 square feet per unit on there pretty much precludes almost all of the entrance corridor lots from adding anything. And as Tom pointed out, you still need the parking and you still need the side setbacks, or if you have something, side, front, and rear setbacks. If you have something that's non-conforming, it has to go to ZBA for alteration of a non-conforming structure. So as I was here last time, someone said there's the potential for thousands of units to be added around town, and that is just completely ridiculous. I can see the potential for maybe a dozen or two units to be added around town, but I don't know why we're making this change based on such a small, tiny little window there. So I would like to go through some of the benefits of the current zoning and encourage the redevelopment of existing structures where the structure might be non-conforming for side, rear, or almost all of them, with 4 exceptions that I could find in the entrance corridor, are non-conforming for front setback, meaning they're built right on the sidewalk, which you can't do today. So if someone was to knock it down and try to make it conforming, they would have to build it outside of that. Obviously, renovations of existing buildings, they'd have to comply with code compliance and efficiency, mold abatement, asbestos abatement, lead abatement, railings, hardwired smoke detectors, fire suppression for anything over 2 units, and there's an increase in safety there. There is oversight in place. Anything over 5 units requires planning board approval, and anything that's an alteration of a non-conforming structure requires ZBA approval. So where almost all of them are non-conforming, we're really only talking about taking a 4 or 5 bedroom unit and splitting it into 2 bedroom or 1 bedroom units. This provides an increase in home ownership where most likely they become condos versus neglected investor properties. Obviously, the aesthetics, there's a pretty substantial difference in what Bridge Street looked like 3 years ago to what it looks like today. And of course, the revenue. I take 103 Bridge as an example because it was the first domino to fall in this B1. And the taxes on 2014 and that, or 15, were $44.23. And the taxes in 2018 are $27,424. So that's a $23,000 net increase on one property. And there's about 10 properties that were done over subsequent to that because they saw the comparable sales value. And that previously Bridge Street didn't have any comps that were selling for $300 a square foot. Now they're selling for $480 a square foot, making them the highest dollars per square foot condo sold in the entire city of Salem. I think the 80 to 100 Bridge Street block should be looked at as a case study for B1 working well. I multiply that one example by the 10 buildings that were done there, and I can tell you that nowhere else in the city of Salem will you find building or unit owners that are as happy to pay that increase in taxes as those new owners at 85, 87, 89, 91, 93, 95, and 103 Bridge, as well as 100 and 104, and a couple buildings in between there that have been renovated as well. That's about it.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Okay, Laura, do you want to come back up?
So what we just
Come up to the microphone so we get you.
Or Tontat Northeast, 30 Northeast Street. Oh, Tontat, T-O-N-T-H-A-T. Just trying to understand what he said. If you have an existing retail and it's smaller than 35,000 square feet, 100 square feet, and you want to add 2 units above it because it's just one level store, isn't it grandfathered because it's in that size, in that lot size? Is it grandfathered? Wait, so if you have just a 1-floor retail and you want to add 2 apartments, or 1 apartment, or 2 apartments, if that's possible, if the height is 30 feet, so you can have two levels, isn't it grandfathered that you don't have, so you don't have to have that 35,000 square feet for dwelling?
Anything additional, anything you're adding, would either have to comply with zoning, receive some relief from the zoning board.
Okay, so they have to go before ZBA, just like if somebody wanted to raise it and
If you raise it, all your grandfather status goes away, except for the lot size itself. Any dimensional stuff goes away.
Okay, so, but they'll just have to go before the zoning board to get relief because of, and what is the probability of them being able to do that?
If I could comment on an earlier.
Sure, come back up to the microphone though, so that we could come up to the microphone so we can get you.
An earlier comment by Council Sidon talked about the B1 person possibly going to the second floor and then getting a variance to go to the third floor. I can tell you that that's not happening. Our zoning board does not grant variances. You can't create a hardship like that. And our zoning board has been particularly tough on granting variances of that nature. So really variances are not a concern here for something like that. I don't know if that answered your question, but I mean, anything new would have to comply with zoning or relief, or receive some relief from the zoning board or planning board, whoever's appropriate.
Okay, Councilor Terrell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a specific question. I'll use this as an example. The property at 172 Lafayette, which is in a B1, it's right in the corner of Lafayette and Cedar. It's right now, it's 3 retail bays, and it's with a small parking lot and a Ridgedale facing Lafayette Street. Let's say somebody took that property and wanted to add 1 or 2 floors within whatever is allowed, up to 30 feet, that within that proposed limit. What would the process be there, and what would or could they potentially be able to do? What variances would they have to get? Let's say they wanted to add 2 matching floors that would be 4 units.
If I may?
Yes.
As it stands now, they barely met their parking requirement for the existing uses, so they would be looking at a variance from the parking tables. And again, variances are few and far between from the zoning board right now.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilor
Can I answer
Dibble?
that question too?
Hang on, because Councilor Dibble had his hand up, and I know he has to go, so.
I'll yield.
Oh, okay,
Finish that question.
okay.
I thought I answered it, but.
Well, that,
You gotta come up to the microphone, Mike, because otherwise we can't record you.
that's one of the lots that I looked at in the,
Get up to the mic before you start talking. Go ahead.
that's one of the lots that I
Thank
looked at
you.
in the entrance corridor, and it is one of the 4 lots that meets the front setback, but it doesn't meet the side or rear setback. So it's a non-conforming structure, so as referenced earlier, it would need a special permit. So if I could throw one other comment in.
Okay.
Why don't we just make anything that adds a unit subject to design review? Problem solved. I mean, really, some design review would be nice on some of these projects that are by right anyway. And that, I'm not saying I have the best taste in the world, but I've seen some things that I'm like, wouldn't do that. But it's kind of a catch-all to like, get some green space, the parking in the right space, and get some input of people who actually know about, planning, what things should look like. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm very happy to learn that we're on firm ground from the vote in 2009, that what I thought were Scrivener's errors and what I thought was recodification, and now today we'd have Scrivener's errors. It's just going to open up a whole can of worms for lawyers to have fun with it all. But in our research, and the city solicitor mentioned, it was learned that the vote in 2009 actually created a new zoning ordinance from the 62 version to the 2009. We now had a Bible, if you would, that was not something that our city building inspector would follow, but it's a Bible. It's law now. Okay? So calling these things Scrivener's errors is no longer valid because we got rid of the old zoning. In 2009, we voted a new code of ordinances. So you can't call them Scrivener's errors at all. Anything that we're proposing here is actually zoning changes. I'll get back to that. To our building inspector, under the B1, just to clarify, you said that the 30 feet height restriction will stay the same? Is that right?
That's what's currently in the book, and then we would propose to leave it alone, yes.
To leave it alone?
Yeah.
Okay, and the 3,500 square feet, 3,500 square feet per unit is what's being proposed here?
As a change in zoning, yes.
As a change of zoning, not a Scrivener's error, because we can't even have that discussion. Okay. The dominoes from the B1, the old ordinance said B2 would allow anything allowed in B1. B4, anything allowed in B1. Is it your opinion that That's not the case now with this new ordinance from 2009.
I don't think I've ever argued that the 2009 ordinance is not in play. There were mistakes made going from the 65 document to the 2009, whether you call them Scribner's errors or just errors, there were errors made. That was our opinion. Scribner's was a term we thought was appropriate, and turns out it isn't. That document is gone, so that pyramid backwards isn't even in play. So that's why we've changed this to just a zoning proposal in the B1 with just that particular dimensional number inserted in the table.
Okay, so the retail space on Highland Avenue, for example, that are B2 won't follow the B1?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. I guess when we're remanding this to the planning board for their opinion, I'd like them to take a look at, we're talking about B1 being little mom and pop type stores, small places along Bridge Street and Lafayette Street, et cetera. In Ward, I think on Highland Avenue, but in Ward 7, in Vinton Square, the Staples Plaza with about 7 smaller stores or 10 smaller stores attached to it, that's a big complex. That's B1. I don't know how many units would be able to go above that, but it's a sizable number of units. It's not 1 or 2 or 3, like a mom and pop store. It's a whole housing development that could go in there. So if the planning board can please take a look at that, I'd like to see it somehow be divided. And we talk about mom and pop stores versus a big shopping plaza that happens to be called B1. I think there's some on Highland Avenue as well.
Thank you.
No?
Oh, sorry.
With regard to some comments that were mentioned here tonight, in particular by Ms. Wilbert and Mr. Jenkins, I'm in agreement that this whole measure was posted wrong. It may have been advertised wrong, depending on, the city solicitor and I have disagreed on the advertising side of things, but it was certainly posted wrong. And then it was read here tonight out loud that these were Scribner's errors and that the B1, including the B1 changes. So the B1 changes were part of the Scribner's errors as was read here today and as I've read in the past. And it's been my opinion since day one, since we first met and at ad hoc committee, that this whole activity here tonight is not totally legal. It needs to be advertised as zoning changes. And in my opinion, we should stop, advertise it correctly, and then start the process, unfortunately, start the process over with these zoning changes. Since day one, I've been calling all these zoning changes, and tonight, I think we've heard testimony from our solicitor that these are zoning changes. So I say we get it right. It's been posted and read out loud here tonight and maybe advertised incorrectly. Let's make it legal. Let's start at the beginning. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. So just to be clear, Beth, we aren't running afoul of the law.
Here's the thing. These are zoning amendments, no question. The way that the ad was put together, it says an ordinance amending zoning section 3, table of uses, amending Scribner's errors, recodification of 2009, including allowing dwelling above the first floor retail service in the B1 zone. It goes on to list the others. All the case law that I've looked at is based on whether or not the public got notice that there was going to be a change that may affect them. I don't believe that anyone that owns a property in B1, and Mr. Beck is here, anyone that owns that property who was interested in this issue didn't get notice of this change that's proposed. I can give a legal memorandum on that. I don't have a problem with re-advertising it, if that's what the will of the council. But I believe that sufficient notice was provided.
Thank you.
I can report to that. I didn't get it.
Okay, hang on, because we need you to come back up, but hang on 1 second. Councilor Dibble?
Yes, Madam President, I didn't agree with the city solicitor here, but it was posted, our agenda was posted incorrectly. It was read aloud incorrectly here tonight. We were calling them Scribner's errors until tonight. So at the beginning, the first half of this joint public hearing, we called it Scribner's errors, all the way through the whole get-go. So it was posted on our agendas, made public, made available to the public, posted on our website. It was posted as Scribner's errors. it should be zoning changes.
So just to be clear, and again, what the city solicitor said is that it's an ordinance amending zoning. So because
Yes,
we
but-
use, but again, what the city solicitor, who has a law degree, is saying is that there was sufficient notice that it's clear that a zoning amendment was going to be proposed to be discussed. So just because we used the word Scrivener error, it doesn't mean that people weren't sufficiently notified of what was going to be taking place tonight. And that's what the legal opinion is. That's, again, what she saw, what she researched on the case law to make sure that she understands exactly what is being asked here. And so, I mean, it's... Sure.
So the legal ad that went in the newspaper and the legal ad that was posted is different than what the clerk put on the agenda and what you're seeing before you. So the legal notice says something slightly different, I believe. I think that's what he's referring to. The legal notice that went in the newspaper says an ordinance amending zoning section 3, and it goes on to list the things that are going to be changed. That was in the newspaper, that was posted here at City Hall.
Counselor Sargent?
Thank you, Madam President. I know, I agree it was posted in the paper, but if you take a certain lot in the city and you're gonna propose to change zoning on that lot, all abutters and near abutters they're notified by mail. So,
No.
zoning
No.
changes? Oh. Yeah, if someone goes before the Board of Appeals, you notify abutters and their abutters. So in my way of thinking, any piece of property affected by this, at least the property owner should have got something in the mail. You might own a piece of property and it was gonna change what was to be done on your property. And if you're, away for a month or something like that, if you didn't read the paper, you have no notice of some change to your property, change to your value, change to your financial conditions. So we didn't notify not abutters and their abutters, but we didn't even notify every property owner that may be affected by this. And that's something I feel like we should do whenever something like this is gonna happen. And change of a piece of land is one thing. Change of use of land involves so many more areas of the city. So that's why going forward, when we do something like this again, I really would like to see us do something like the North River Canal Corridor to get groups together. So when it's all said and done, we don't have anybody coming forward saying, I didn't know about this, why didn't you let me know about this, and those kind of things. We don't have to know everything, but we really should let people know what's going on around them so they can at least have an informed decision about how they feel about it, or even know they should feel something about it. So that's why, as Council Dibble alluded to, I wish we would bring this forward again and have a little working group work on it as we do with many things, and then bring it forward with a consensus and take some of the anxiety away from it. I think that half the anxiety was taken away tonight by corrections on the industrial list, and I think that went well. But I still think there's some other anxiety about it also. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Polly?
Polly Wilbert, 7 Cedar Street. So I just want to reemphasize that I think based on the city's sunshine ordinance, because of the confusion that has occurred by referring to these changes as errors, it diminished in the mind of the average citizen that there was nothing significant happening here, that this was just some cleanup. When we used the definition of Scrivener's errors, we diminished what was occurring. And so we didn't provide sufficient notice that these were changes to the zoning. And therefore, I think a lot of people just looked at this, and in fact, to some of your constituents, where you referred to them as related to some errors in the recodification that Salem did in 2009, further diminished people's desire to investigate what was happening. And I encourage you to re-advertise and start the process over to protect the city.
I guess I saw Mike's hand first and then Counselor Dibble, if that's okay. But Counselor Dibble, you have to, don't you have to go?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so how about you go first and then Mike?
Motion to end this process and to start all over and re-advertise it properly, calling it zoning changes.
Second.
Okay, Counselor Dibble moves that this, say the motion again, that this,
That we start all over and advertise these, and I agree with a lot of these changes, probably all of these changes need to be made. Especially the B1, we should get a good handle on that, swimming pool fences, on and on. But my motion is that we stop the process now and that we properly advertise it, calling all these changes zoning changes.
okay, so I just want to make sure that as I call this out, that I have the correct wording, that your motion
I'm
is-
flexible to the wording.
Okay, motion by Counselor Dibble to stop the process under zoning amendment section 3 as part of our joint public hearing process in order to re-advertise. Okay.
As zoning changes.
As zoning changes. Seconded by Counselor Sargent. Okay, all those in favor? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then count 6. Okay, motion does not carry. So I guess Councilor McCarthy? Or, I'm sorry, Mike. Did you have something else to add? I'm sorry, Mike. Thank you.
I just want to applaud what Paulie said and also what Councilor Sargent and Councilor Dibble said, and then also retort to the city solicitor's comment that I received no written notification. I only knew about this because I'm in and out of the building department on a regular basis, and I knew that this was coming, but didn't receive any written notification, and I have probably 5 or 6 B1 properties, so would have been nice to know legally, like being notified.
That's all.
Thank you. Okay, so Councilor McCarthy? Or, yep, Tim,
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the hearing be closed.
Councilor McCarthy moves that the hearing be closed. All those in favor? All those opposed? Matter carries. Councilor McCarthy?
I move that the matter be referred to the planning board for their recommendation.
Councilor McCarthy moves that the matter be referred to the planning board for their recommendation. All those in favor? All those opposed? Matter carries. Next, continuation of a joint public hearing of the city council and the planning board. So this would be page 2.
Amend zoning section 4.1.1, table of dimensional requirements establishing 1, max height of fences, and 2, dimensional requirements for B1 zone dwellings.
Tom and Tom.
All right. So just to pick up in my memo, we're on page 3, and this refers to, we've updated the ordinance, which is Roman numeral 2. So this is...
And I'm sorry, let's just let the record reflect that Councilor Dibble has excused himself. Okay, sorry, please continue.
So this is regarding the maximum height of retaining walls, boundary walls, and/or fences. You'll see a row from a table that indicates the maximum height of these, and that had been included in the 1965 ordinance, but was deleted when it was recodified. So we're looking to insert that. As the memo notes, the table from 1965 did not include the NRCC column in it, so we've included that here with that 4-foot height. It also had industrial at 15 feet, and we've made that, recommending that it's 10 feet to conform with the other commercial uses. Below the table, you'll also note language that was in the 1965 version that was retained that states retaining walls, boundary walls, and/or fences may be built abutting the property line. The height of the retaining walls, boundary walls, and/or fences shall be measured on the inside face of the structure on the owner's side. 2009 retained that and added C section 6.8, visibility at intersection. And what we had put forth was adding
I'm
one more.
sorry, can you guys either take your conversation outside or, thank you. Sorry.
What we had put forth was adding one more sentence that states fences shall be no more than 6 feet for residential uses, excluding the NRCC district unless otherwise provided, and 10 feet for commercial uses. You'll note in the Roman number 2 document, the ordinance, that we had not made the distinction of the NRCC in there, so that's why you'll see that underlined as an insertion here. But the rationale for having this language in here is to, although it appears to be redundant from the table, we're actually indicating that if you have a residential use in a commercial district or a commercial use in a residential district, that's calling out the height of the fence restriction. The next thing under table 4.1.1 is what we've talked about already this evening, and that is the minimum lot area per dwelling unit in the B1 district. And what we had submitted previously and discussed at the last joint public hearing, we had asked, the language was that it mirrored the R3 zoning district, and you'll see again on this ordinance what's been stricken and what's been included, because we wanted to specify that all we're talking about is the minimum lot area per dwelling unit at 3,500 square feet. And I guess that's the last thing.
Definition.
That's the last thing. Those are the only items on this one, and then the remaining ordinances regarding definitions. So I know we've talked a bit about this before, but we're happy to take more questions about the fences, the height of fences, and the minimum lot area per dwelling unit.
Thank you. So Councilor Sargent, you had your hand up first.
Yes, just making sure that, that if we use R3 in the B1, we're dealing with R3 density, not R3 dimensions, because of that.
But again, the only change is we're inserting the 3,500 square feet per dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Nothing else is proposed to change in the B1 zone.
Why do we have that quote in there under B1 on the, the first page, that all dwelling units constructed in B1 shall comply with dimensional requirements of the R3 multifamily district? What is that?
That was stricken.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Why do we have the quote under B1 about it require, all dwelling units constructed in the B1 zoning district shall comply with dimensional requirements of R3 multifamily zoning district near the bottom?
If I may, Madam
It's
Chair.
stricken. Yep.
Through Madam Chair, Councilor Sargent, that was the language that we had submitted in February, and at the joint public hearing on April 9th, the discussion revealed that that was having other impacts than what had been intended. So what we're saying is that language, if you refer to this page, Roman numeral 2,
Right.
you'll see that that language has been eliminated, and all we're asking is that the minimum lot area per dwelling unit be listed as 3,500 square feet in the dimensional table.
Okay, very well. It's just if it's stricken, it shouldn't show up anymore, right?
Sorry?
If it's stricken going forward, it shouldn't show up anywhere, right?
It's stricken to show you that it's.
No, I'm not looking at the stricken part where it's crossed out. I'm looking at where it's written down. So it doesn't say, I know, I see it stricken there, but it's not stricken here.
Right, if you turn the page, it explains that revised language on the top of page 4, the revised proposed language is to update the table of dimension requirements to include 3,500 square feet as the minimum lot area per dwelling unit in the B1 district.
Thank you.
Councilor Terrio?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so, just to build on that, so all additional existing dimensional requirements and density requirements of B1 remain in place. So there's no change to your parking requirements, there's no change to your maximum height or anything else. This is just saying what your minimum lot size is at that point.
That's correct. It's inserting a dimensional regulation that was not there.
Any other questions from council members? Any, Councilor Terrio?
This is the change that satisfied the one real open question and issue that I had with the B1 change, which was the that limitation. So getting that limitation in here and specified now works, for my opinion at least.
Thank you. Any planning board members have any questions or comments? Any members of the public? Oh, Tim Jenkins.
Sorry. Tim Jenkins, 18 Broad Street. In reading the MGL statute, I'm sorry if this doesn't directly address this, because the topic has come up about notification on zoning changes. We don't make the changes very often, I guess 1965, 2009, now. And it is interesting how, if you need a curb cut, you need a variance, there's a notice goes out to abutters and abutters to abutters. These are much more significant changes, but MGL law, strangely enough, does not require notice, as far as I can tell. And more oddly enough, the only exception to that is non-resident property owners. And that I don't even understand that, but in any case, I don't know if the city solicitor could look into it, but it would be really interesting to find out if we are empowered to include something like that in our own ordinance, so that we would be notifying people. There wouldn't be a question, for instance, Scrivener's errors. I read it and went, oh, this is just a small little typo type thing, and then I looked at it more carefully. This is not, in my opinion, a Scrivener's error. So I really did appreciate this as a zoning change in the end, and it's taken us a while to get there, but that's where we are. If you're going to do a zoning change, I think it's not only is it incumbent upon advertising in the paper, which we do, noticing and whatnot, and meeting the sunshine ordinance requirements, but I think as an additional step, so that there is clarification, so the community supports zoning changes, that if it's reasonable, possible, and legal, we should notify those who are going to be subjected specifically to a zoning change on their property. And it's a policing power issue, and I would find it hard to believe you would be breaking with Massachusetts general law if you included that, but it would be good to get clarification on that, and maybe that can be brought up in another point when we are amending either our general ordinances or specific zoning ordinances. Thanks.
So the question is then, how do we give notification and?
That matter's not before us right now, but it's
Okay.
something we can look at.
It's what?
That matter's not before us right now, but we can look at that.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. No problem. That was a worthwhile question. Any other members of the, Ben?
I have a question related to the maximum height for retaining wall, boundary walls, and/or fences, either of the towns. We have fence height restrictions and entrance corridor overlays. How would that affect, specifically the question I have is with the commercial use on an entrance corridor overlay, how those fence height restrictions correlate to these changes or requirements?
My interpretation of that is that the entrance corridor overlay is an overriding.
It would trump, basically.
Yeah, because it was done intentionally for those properties along the corridor.
There are certain situations where a high fence is really.
Welcome to my job. I get stuff like that all the time, but that is a valid question. That's one, and oftentimes we have to consult with the city solicitor. We and the planner, and we bounce those around when they pop up, and they do pop up occasionally.
Yeah.
But my opinion is that is a standalone or overriding ordinance.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No further questions from the public? Okay. Council McCarthy?
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the hearing be closed.
Council McCarthy moves that the hearing be closed. All those in favor? All those opposed? Matter carries. Council McCarthy?
Thank you, Madam President. I further move that the matter be referred to the planning board for their recommendation.
Council McCarthy moves that the matter be referred to the planning board for their recommendation. All those in favor? All those opposed? Matter carries. Next, continuation of a joint public hearing of the City Council and the Planning Board.
An ordinance amending zoning section 10.0 definitions relative to dwelling unit, rooming, boarding, and lodging house, general service establishment, assisted living residence, site plan review, and zoning board of appeal.
Tom and Tom.
Okay, very good. Thank you. This last matter is quite straightforward in terms of being definitions that are either being modified or new additions, new definitions being added. So again, I direct your attention to the document with the Roman numeral 3 up in the top. So these are just some clarifications we made. We picked up Ms. Wilbert's typographical errors that she had caught at the last public hearing.
Not my errors, your errors.
Right. Thank you. Our errors, they should call that.
Okay, a gold star to Polly regardless.
A second set of eyes looking at things, or a third set, or a fourth set in this next one. In any event, letter A, the dwelling unit definition is adding this reference to the state building code. We are striking this language regarding the Mass General Law because that actually refers to the rooming boarding house. Letter B is a correction to the language that is from the Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 22. This is how it is defined by the state, and our request here is for the definition in our ordinance to mirror that. Letter C is for general service establishment. It's just making a small revision so that the word "and" comes immediately before the word "furniture," and we delete the phrase "and the like" at the end. And then letters D has 3 of them in there: assisted living residences, site plan review, and the zoning board of appeals. Just adding these definitions which had not been in the 2009 ordinance.
Nor were they in this 1965 document.
But nor were they in the 1965.
Yeah.
So we don't have a zoning board of appeals.
Okay, so Councilor Sargent.
Just for a lot of questions I've got, can you give us a description of general services establishment?
The reference in the old document was major laundries, like a wholesale laundry type place versus the retail dry cleaners. That was the example that they gave.
And here it's services applying other uses such as upholstery, appliance repair, furniture refinishing.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other councilors? Any questions? Planning board members? Any questions? Members of the public? Any questions? Oh, Polly.
Polly Wilbert, 7 Cedar Street. So I just, again, point out, as I did at the last hearing, that under D, your assisted living residence, I cannot believe that this is legal. That in order for someone to receive medication assistance, they have to have that from a licensed professional. It's either got to be a nurse or a doctor. And by putting this in, I believe this is erroneous. That does not provide medical or nursing services. If they're supervising medication, they are providing, at a minimum, nursing service.
So you're saying that they have to be
They
a
have to be
clinician?
licensed in this Commonwealth of Massachusetts to provide assistance with medication.
Councilor Milo.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just offer this, and I don't know, but
is there a difference between dispensing medication and medication assistance? For instance, you could have somebody who took the person's pills and put them in their little boxes every week, and to me, that would be medication assistance, as opposed to somebody who comes in and says, okay, you're here for your medicine, take it.
There's 4 cc's of whatever.
Which would be dispensing it, and I would agree that you'd probably need a medical professional for something like that, but if it's like almost like a CNA kind of thing, you know, coming in to just set the thing up for then the resident to take on their own. I mean, I don't know if, you know, I haven't done research on that definition, but that's just my sense that
Right. I mean,
that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, this was actually something that when I was working for Mass Health and UMass Medical School, that we were working on developing the whole personal care attendant program of someone who was getting paid by the state to provide services, but they weren't clinician level services. So, Councilor Terrell and then Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the city solicitor, I think, Beth, would it be, in a case like this, we're talking about basically accepting the state definition, whereas we're just taking what assisted living is here and putting it into our own books. But as far as the assisted living facility, not being familiar with that process, would the licensing process for an assisted living facility cover medical professionals or the dispensing medicine and all the like?
I don't know the answer to that question. I can certainly look into that. I believe they're just, in this definition, trying to distinguish this from a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that I can, if we refer it to the planning board, it's something that we can look at.
Okay.
If I could.
Yep, and then Councilor McCarthy.
Just give you our spin on it we don't have this definition in our zoning, and it's a frequently asked question.
Mm-hmm.
And all we're trying to do is differentiate that from a nursing home, which we do have in our definitions. I think we all know what assisted living is. Most of us have it's in there. The legal definition of the medicines or not, I don't know. But it's really an attempt to capture what's going on today in today's zoning.
Yeah, I mean, my grandmother, when she was alive, she lived at the Bertram House in Swampscott, and that was assisted living. And then when she needed a higher level of care, she ended up going to Jewish rehab, and
Right,
she
so we
passed
make that
away there.
distinction now in
But,
nursing
yeah.
homes, but we don't have assisted living in particular language.
Thank you. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom's answered my question. I was just wondering where the definition came and why we needed it, but it's obvious why we need it. I mean, I'll let the legal aspects of it work out when we get the recommendation back from the planning board, but, I mean, as long as the definition is coming from someplace in the state or someplace, and then, to make a distinction between nursing homes and assisted living, I think that's where it just is a clear break there, and that's what we need to identify, but other than that, I don't have an issue with it.
Okay. Any other councilors or planning board members? Members of the public? Anyone else? Okay. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the hearing be closed.
Councilor McCarthy moves that the hearing be closed. All those in favor? All those opposed? Matter carries. Councilor McCarthy.
I further move that the matter be referred to the planning board for their recommendation.
Councilor McCarthy moves that the matter be referred to the planning board for their recommendation. All those in favor? All those opposed? Matter carries. Councilor Fury.
Motion to adjourn.
Councilor Fury motions to adjourn. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.